Paris, Florence, Santorini, Kyoto. Why does it sometimes seem like, unless you're going to some exotic, faraway, and super scenic destination, that your general surroundings on a daily basis are just not worthy of being painted? But what if that didn't have to be the case? What if the most ordinary and seemingly mundane of places could actually make for the most extraordinary of paintings? Let's talk about it. Maybe you can relate. You hear everyone talking about their amazing travels. Pictures of them posted on social, hiking the Grand Canyon, on a gondola in Venice, and don't even get me started on the reels. And then there's the paintings. Gorgeous urban sketches and en plein air paintings of these spectacular places. Okay, maybe I'm projecting, but where I'm going is, what if you could find your next source of inspiration from your own backyard? I was reading up on my favorite art history books, and I started to notice something. While yes, some artists had the luxury of traveling to faraway destinations, and some artists actually had magnificent gardens filled with endless sources of jaw-dropping inspiration. I'm looking at you, Monet. I can't even imagine the landscaping bill. But getting back on topic, there were artists who literally painted back alleys or their actual hospital room and transformed those objectively ugly places into something memorable and beautiful. And that, my friends, is the subject of today's video.
It's tutorial time.
So many seeds to sow. When the harvest comes in, it will be time to share what we have grown.
But not just any tutorial. No, this video will not be about the piece of paper you get at the end. It's going to be about a process you can implement for the rest of your life.
But hold up, before we move on, we're gonna have to make a deal. I know. You never make deals with people you don't know, especially not on the internet. And I, for one, have no idea who I'm talking to on the other side of that piece of glass. But hey, we're gonna have to trust each other, okay? Pinky promise? Pinky promise.
Here's the deal. I want you to grab your own inspiration. Find a photo, go out for a walk, open a window, but base your painting on where you are and what you see. Since it's a beautiful spring day, I've invited you to my own backyard and we're gonna search for something to paint. So how do we start? Let's take a look around. We've got to find something that catches our attention. We are looking for a focal point. And no, it doesn't have to be super fancy because the transformation is what's going to make it special. Now, obviously, depending on where you are, your surroundings will be different. If you're in a city, you'll likely have a lot more vertical and maybe boxier shapes. If you're by the sea or by a lake, you might have a big area of water and maybe a more horizontal layout. Regardless, I want you to find something that you can focus on. A house, a boat, a pond, a couple of trees, but choose something that can draw your attention in that direction.
This is my favorite part of my entire yard. It's a Japanese maple tree. But as much as I love this tree, something about this composition comes across as a little bit flat. The tree is right in the middle. We don't have anything very dynamic bringing our eyes here. It just kind of feels full front and center. Not terribly exciting. So what if we took a look at this subject from a different vantage point to make it a little bit more exciting? There's an area right over there between some trees that I'm going to check out, and hopefully we can build a little bit more of a dynamic and more exciting composition from there. So let's check it out. Okay, so this viewpoint is a little bit more interesting.
I've got the maple tree in view, but now I'm getting more of my neighbor's house in it, as well as a bigger sense of perspective, thanks to the fence and architecture on the side of it. I've framed the view so that my composition takes advantage of the rule of thirds. But wait, what is the rule of thirds anyway? The rule of thirds is where you divide your page into a grid of 9 equal sections, just like this, using 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines. And when you put your focal point along these lines, or at their intersection, it creates a more dynamic and a more exciting composition.
So now my Japanese maple is to the side, and we are creating another focal point. We are creating a focal point in another place of tension where those lines that intersect from our rule of thirds, where that happens. And that is conveniently placed where my neighbor's window is. And so with that, you can create a tension between 2 elements, and you can also start to have the beginning of a story. So who is in that window? Is somebody looking on my subject? What is the relationship between those 2 elements? And that is where the storytelling can begin. As you can see, we start to get into the intricacies, and these are really the elements that help to transform something from an ordinary place into an actual story, and to something that is much more compelling than what its face value is. All right, let's get back into the studio.
So let's paint. I've got my block of paper. This is a pad from Etcher, a nice cold press paper with lots of personality and texture. I'm also going to be switching gears today from my typical watercolor setup to gouache. The folks at Graham generously sent me some of their paints to try, since their watercolors are my holy grail at the moment. We'll see how they perform. So follow along with me, and I'm going to prompt you along the way as you paint your version. Remember our pinky promise? You don't think I'd forget, did you? Okay, so let's start by bringing our subject onto the page. I'm using my video to reference what I saw, but you can draw from life, take a picture with your iPhone, whatever floats your boat. As you bring your sketch onto paper, think about what we talked about with composition. Aim to create something dynamic in your composition with that rule of thirds I was talking about. Also, as much as you may feel compelled to transpose your subject with perfect photographic accuracy, remember, it's your picture. So that means that you can choose to highlight or even exaggerate whatever you want. My window can be larger than it actually is if I want it to be. And same goes for my tree. Supersizing it makes it feel alive and bursting with energy. What about you? What can you highlight or reduce? Composition is a sequence of decisions, all with the aim of finding balance. So if some elements get bigger, some other elements will need to shrink. If you add more somewhere, you'll likely need to simplify elsewhere. I was reading up about an artist that I studied in art school a while ago, and I wasn't the fondest of him at the time, but when I was doing research for this video, I started to look at his work very differently. I'm talking about the artist David Hockney. David Hockney is an English painter best known for his vibrant and his colorful landscapes, often of scenes from his everyday life in California. And what struck me about him is his ability to find beauty in the mundane, turning ordinary moments into extraordinary compositions. You see, unlike traditional landscape painters who sought to depict nature in its exact state, Hockney embraced the idea of transformation. He famously said, I quote, "If it's boring, it's not the landscape that becomes boring. It's the depiction that's boring." And that puts the power right back into your hands, and I love that. So let's start laying down some color. I'm keeping Hockney's approach in mind. Gouache is a very versatile medium that allows for both opaque and transparent layers, giving me the flexibility to experiment with different techniques. But you use what you want and what speaks to you. Get your watercolors out, get your markers, your colored pencils, whatever makes you feel excited. I'm blocking in basic shapes and colors, focusing on capturing the essence of what drew me to this scene in the first place. The Japanese maple becomes a riot of colors. Was it pink? No, but I'm still reaching for Graham's extraordinary Quin Rose with the hopes that some of that fabulousness can grace my painting too. Remember, you can exaggerate. You can even walk completely away from reality if you want to. And that's what Hockney did. At times, he felt that perspective was stifling that feeling of expansiveness and bigness in his paintings. So he just did away with perspective altogether, which actually made for something that felt even more graphic and expansive, like it was exploding off of the canvas. Speaking of exploding, these engrams are a detonation in a tube. The pigments are so finely ground that they move around the page like butter. As I block in my colors, I try to bring in as much variation in my underpainting as possible. I'm using water to dilute some areas, and I'm coming punchier and more saturated in others. The more I add this variation now, the more it will pay off later. Okay, so we're done with the color blocking. Let's bring in some details. If you want to go with some more realistic details, go for it. I, for one, love the idea of bringing in textures and shapes, nearly like a textile. And you know, if you really take the time to observe everything around you, you'll find that there are endless textures, colors, and references to pull from to build in what I call the visual language of your painting. Another one of my favorite quotes and anecdotes is one by Vincent van Gogh. In one of his letters to Sister Wilhelmina, he said, I quote, "The uglier, older, meaner, and poorer I get, the more I wish to take my revenge by doing brilliant color, well-arranged, resplendent." And that's the magic of painting from life. It's not just about the scene, but capturing a moment in time, a feeling, a memory. As I put the finishing touches on my painting, I can't help but smile because it might not be a grand vista or a famous landmark. It might not be my best painting, but it's my tree, my sanctuary, my source of inspiration, and my moment rendered with my voice and my choices. What choices will you make?
So hopefully this video helped to give you some ideas for how to tackle landscapes, but also how to process your surroundings and tackle subject matter in a way that's unique and with a different perspective. In the meantime, I'm gonna go enjoy a little bit more of that beautiful sunny weather. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.